everyone, it's Sherry from Our Life Homeschooling, where I share homeschooling encouragement for everyday moms. Today I want to give you my best tips for spending individual time with your kids when you have multiple children. Originally, when I was going to do this video, I was going to do my number one tip for spending individual time with your kids. And the more I thought of it, the more I thought of just a couple more things that I wanted to share with you. And so I'm still sharing that number one tip, but it's going to be the very last one I share. It's something super simple and practical and has really helped me. So you'll want to stay along to hear that. Guided total should be 6 to 18. Fourth, when you bring it up, it becomes y to the negative fourth. So y squared.
Stop, kid.
Here, and pity at his father's home recognized how poor was their lot, how dependent upon the charity of others. If this is your first time on my channel, I want to introduce myself. My name is Sherry. On my channel, I share all about homeschooling encouragement. I'm a mom to 10 kids. I've been homeschooling for 14 years. I was a public school teacher several years ago before I started homeschooling. And I love coming on here and talking about practical things like homeschooling struggles. We all have them, and how to keep your house clean when you're homeschooling, how to manage multiple children when you have little ones, older ones, the wide age range, all kinds of practical encouragement. I also do day in the life videos, and in those I like to talk about just some of the little things that maybe are hard to put into one video, just all the little ways that we homeschool, tips that have helped me, and just share with you our experience in our home and what it looks like in our home on a daily basis as we homeschool. I think the place to start when you want to spend individual time with your kids is just simply to be aware of it. If you're watching this video, you are thinking, am I spending enough individual time with my kids? Or I want to get more one-on-one time with them. And just being at that point is showing you that you are already aware of it. You are making this a priority. If you have more than one child, it can be challenging to make sure that everyone's needs are being met. Now, my husband and I, we have 10 children. Never thought that we would have that many kids. We both did not come from big families. We had 4 kids in each of our families, and although that is considered a big family by today's standards, it certainly isn't as many as 10. And while we love the beauty of having lots of children filling our home, and our kids are just bring us so much joy, it can be challenging to just make sure that everyone's needs are being met, and it's something that we want to be aware of. When I used to see big families, this is years ago before I had any kids, I would just look at them, and in my head I just saw a number. I would see all these kids, I maybe would count the boys and girls, and in my head it was just a number. But if you're a mom and you have a couple children, it's not a number to you. These are your precious children, and they're each individuals. They're so different. They have different needs. They have different bents, different interests. None of them are even remotely alike. And so I look at each of my kids as individuals, and I want to spend time with them individually and to meet their needs and to care for them and be aware of some of the struggles they're having or things they need help with or ways I can challenge them and encourage them to have stronger character in certain areas. So I think being aware of the needs of your children is the first step, the place we need to start when we want to spend individual time with them. The second thing is don't overthink it. We live in an American me culture where everything is, you're supposed to just have this personalized experience. Everything should fit your style and what your interests are, and everything should revolve around you. And while it's important to be aware of it, If you don't have mommy-daughter dates or daddy-daughter dates, that does not necessarily mean that you're not spending good quality time with your kids one-on-one. I think sometimes in our culture, we have this perception that each child needs to have this completely individualized childhood and experience, and that everything should revolve around them. And I don't think that's good for kids. I'm not downing the, that specialized plan time. That's also nice, but it's not necessary. You can have a lot of quality time with your kids without having something that's so planned and orchestrated. It can be simple. It can be just simple conversations. Checking in with them. I like to check in with all my kids at some point in the day. And sometimes that's just seeing them, noticing that they're down about something and asking them about it. Or going up and saying, hey, how was your day? Did you have anything that was, hard for you today? Or is there anything that you're concerned about? Checking in with them is huge. I like to take walks in the neighborhood. Sometimes I like to go by myself, but occasionally I'll just take one child with me. And it's really amazing to me when we go on a walk together how they just open up and talk about all kinds of things. In fact, a lot of times in the walk, I'll just be really quiet because they're just talking on and on and on. And it's something simple. It's something that's not planned by me necessarily, but it's meaningful. I think back to my grandparents and the simple childhood that they had. I don't think that they had a culture that was centered around individuals as much, and yet they were content. They were happy with what they had, and they learned to appreciate the simple things in life. So when we overthink it, it can lead to just this me-centeredness, and we don't want to do that as well. One of the best ways that we can be aware of our kids' needs and what they're thinking about, what's important to them, is just by listening to them. If you listen to your kids, sometimes I'll have a child that just talks about something over and over and over again, so much that I'm not hearing any of it until I stop and remind myself that this child has been talking about this over and over. This is something they're really into right now. If you listen to them, you'll hear what they're passionate about or maybe what they're struggling with. Just be aware of their needs. Maybe their guitar string broke and you can just be aware and see that they're upset about that and just order one in the mail and let it come in one day. The other day, I was in my bedroom. I wasn't feeling well and I rarely lay down, but this day I was laying down and my son came in. He's 5 years old. He's still learning to read and just doing very basic math. Certainly hasn't learned how to add money, but he came in and he had his little bag of money. And he was sitting on the bed and just talking about his money with me. And for a half an hour, it was all he could talk about. And he was counting it. And at first I kind of ignored it. I wasn't feeling well. And then I realized he is really into this. I want to know what he knows about money. I haven't taught him this in school yet. He's not really old enough. So I started sitting down with him and I realized he knew how much a penny is worth, a nickel, a dime, a quarter. And so then I asked him, can you count it? And he started counting it. Now he is the 8th. He's our 8th. So he has a lot of older brothers and sisters that he picked up on this from. But I sat down with him. I leaned over on the bed and we started counting his money together and just talking about it. And then I told him, hey, why don't you go over in that jar over there? We have a jar that we keep a lot of money, a lot of change in, just change, penny change. And why don't you go get out a couple quarters? And his whole face lit up. That half an hour that we spent talking about his money just made his day. I think if we listen to our kids and be available to them when something's important to them, that is huge. In fact, I think it can mean more to them than having these orchestrated and planned events and planned times. Being there when they need us. Another thing that I think is really helpful is in my everyday work to take one child along with me somewhere or do something with just one child. Maybe cooking or, like I said before, going on a walk. If I go on errands, just take one child. If I go to the grocery store, just take one. We don't always do it this way. Sometimes I like to get out by myself. Or sometimes my husband might just take a bunch of kids and then I can be here by myself, or I'll do that for him, vice versa. But occasionally, just taking one along whenever you're doing different things throughout your day, that's a chance to catch up with them, to work alongside with them, to do something together. It's a chance for conversations. It's tempting to me. I notice that my kids, whenever I start some new project or even just cooking in the kitchen, they all ask me, can I help? Can I help? I want to do this. And it's so hard for me to say no sometimes. But I've done that before. I've said yes to everybody, and by the end of the meal, I'm just exhausted and overwhelmed because I don't know what's going on. Everyone's doing something different. Sometimes something gets spilled or some ingredient gets put in twice, and it's very frustrating. And so I've learned to just do one. I just have one child help me when I'm cooking. When I go out for some different errands, it's nice to just take one child and get that one-on-one time with them, even if it's really short. Now, the next tip might not be very popular depending on you, and maybe this isn't your personality, but I think when we spend more time at home, we tend to spend more time individually with our kids. The more harried we are running around from this thing to that thing, I think kids can easily just get lost in the shuffle. That doesn't mean that it always happens or that it's not good to get out and see things or do things, to plan things. I'm not against that. But when we spend a lot of family time at home, and sometimes that means saying no to good things, I think we spend more time one-on-one with our kids. I'm going to say something else that seems a little counterintuitive. It seems like it kind of goes against what I'm saying, and that is to have definite time away from the kids every day. Get some time away to do something you enjoy. Jesus did this. I actually did a video on this a couple weeks ago. I can't remember the title exactly. I think it was Homeschooling When You're Overwhelmed or something like that. I will link that so that you can take a look at that. But Jesus did this, and I talk about that in the video, how he would get away and he would go off by himself and pray to his Father. And the importance of just getting a little time away, it will refuel you and help you go back so that you want to be with your kids. I notice a tendency that if I don't purposely take some time to do something I enjoy, that I'm just always meeting needs, always serving the next person, always getting the next glass of water, always changing another diaper or wiping someone's nose. There are always needs. And sometimes just going into my room, closing the door, it doesn't have to be long. It can be half an hour, 15 minutes, an hour is really nice. But just a little bit of time, I come back and I'm excited to be a mom again. And I'm ready to spend time with my kids and enjoy them. We've established a nap time in the afternoon. When my kids were little, we had quiet time. And this worked really well. Sometimes it took a while for us to get into this habit. I had to really kind of be on them and make sure everyone was being quiet and no one was getting out of their bedrooms or wherever their quiet time was. And it took a little bit of work to get the habit going. But quiet time worked for a long time with our family. Now that we have 10 kids, the ones that are too old for quiet time, so the ones that don't nap, there's 8 of them. I only have 2 nappers. So when you have that many people, it's hard to have a quiet time. So what I do is usually just go into another room and I tell everyone, don't interrupt me unless there's an emergency. Because otherwise there would be people coming in saying, can I have a piece of paper? Can I have this? Or I want this, or they're fighting and you have to stop it. And I know that quiet time doesn't necessarily play out like this in real life. It's easy to sit on here and talk about a nice peaceful half hour of quiet time where you can get away and be by yourself. Many times I've been in my quiet time or my alone time and I'll hear glass breaking outside. Someone will have broken a glass. The kids will be fighting. The baby will wake up with a blowout. There are things that always happen, and so it makes it difficult. We're moms. This is part of the job. But don't let that keep you from trying to have a consistent time alone. When you spend time alone, doing something, having a hobby that you enjoy, you just have more energy for your kids, and you don't get resentful. You can be resentful when you're always with kids all the time and you don't get a break. My favorite tip I have saved for last, and it's gonna underwhelm you with how simple and practical it is, but it has helped me so much, and that is to write it down. Write down short-term ways that you've spent time with your kids and long-term. So if I ever feel like or maybe I'm worried about, am I spending enough time? Am I in tune with my kids? I'll simply get out a piece of paper. I usually write it in my planner, so it's just in that section for the day. I'll write down the first letter of each of my kids' names, and when I do something one-on-one with them that day, I'll just circle it. I won't even necessarily write what I did, although that's nice too. I'll just circle it, and so then by the end of the day, I just want to make sure that I had checked in with each of my kids. I think it's also good to do this in the long term on your calendar. So in my planner, on my calendar section, just writing down different things that the kids have done. Sometimes I wonder, are we taking our kids out to see fun things, doing fun events? And then I'll look back in my calendar and realize, hey, my mom took them out to this play a couple months ago, and we went on this hike a couple weeks ago. It's so easy to forget. That's why I think writing down what we have done with them is so helpful. We're harder on ourselves than we should be sometimes, and especially if you're a mom that's aware of wanting to spend more one-on-one time with each of your kids, then you're probably doing it. And when you write it down, it just keeps track for you so that you can visually see it and just give yourself that little encouragement that, oh, I have spent time with them. We did do this. Or it just gives you that peace of mind. So this tip is super simple, and but I can't state enough how much it's helped me to look back. I have planners from several years ago, and I'll look back and see some things that I did with my kids one-on-one that I've totally forgotten about. And just having the short term written down and that long term things that I've done with them written down really helps me and gives me peace about remembering some of the great times we had together. I hope this video has helped you. If you're new here, I do one video a week on homeschooling encouragement for everyday moms. If you liked this content, you can take a look at this video that I did last week on homeschooling boys. We have 5 boys, and I talk all about how it works in our home as I homeschool them, especially how to homeschool high school boys. Thanks for watching today. Have a great week.